Do you like Game of Thrones? The story of a mythical world with immortal fire, scheming eunuchs, and barbarian mercenaries serving powerful monarchs? Then you'll love the story of the Byzantine Empire, the eastern part of the Roman Empire that stood for another 1,000 years after the western half had ceased to exist. A place where ambitious queens blinded their own sons, where Viking mercenaries fought off a laundry list of enemies using flaming hand grenades, and where the church was so intertwined with the state that the smallest theological issues could cause riots. Ruled from one of the greatest cities in history, Constantinople, whose fine architecture still impresses today, whose impenetrable walls defended it for centuries, and was so magnificent that in Old Norse and modern Icelandic that the city is known as Miklagard, or the Great City. The city even had its own beacon warning system, like a real-life Gondor. This is the story of a Roman Empire that survived the Dark Ages and kept Greco-Roman culture alive. Over this video series, I will cover the entirety of Byzantine history, its politics, its culture, and its warfare. And I hope that it'll be a fascinating and fun journey for all of us. So let's begin. This episode will act like an episode 0 of what will become a long, multi-episode series that will cover the entire history from the beginning to the end of the Byzantine Empire in 1453.
Which is when the Ottomans took over and the messy story of the Middle East begins. Hi, I'm Knowing Better, and over on my channel we're exploring the history of the modern Middle East in an attempt to figure out why the region is so volatile, including why the lines are drawn where they are and what groups are mad at each other and why. So once you're done learning about the medieval history of the area, why not come over and explore its more recent past? Trust me, it's not as complicated as you might think.
There will be links to that excellent video and to his channel in the description below. First of all, who were the Byzantines and what was the Byzantine Empire? You see, no one in history would have referred to themselves as Byzantine, especially not the people that lived in what we now call the Byzantine Empire. They called themselves Romans and considered themselves just as Roman as Julius Caesar or Augustus would have, and their neighbours would have seen them as Romans too. When the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II conquered Constantinople, he took the title Caesar of Rome, seeing himself as another successor in a long line of Roman emperors. It wasn't until 1557, a century after the empire, that the label Byzantine appears, and it wasn't until the 19th century that it came into common use. It really is just the Eastern Roman Empire, but for simplicity's sake, I will refer to it as the Byzantine Empire throughout this series. Now, Byzantium was the name for the Greek city that existed in the location that will become Constantinople, which will be founded in the next episode. The Byzantine Empire begins to emerge in the crisis of the 3rd century AD, which was a time in Roman history filled with just chaos. In the centuries before the crisis, Rome had been expanding its territory, trading, growing rich, and building beautiful monuments while paving its empire with more than 80,000 kilometers of perfectly engineered roads. This wealth, however, made it a target, and those roads made it easier for invading armies to crisscross the empire. In the west, tribes such as the Alemanni, the Vandals, and the Goths were raiding and encroaching on Roman territory. The Parthian Empire had reformed under its new leader, Ardashir, into the Sassanid Empire and were striking in the east, and dragons such as Smaug, came in from the north, attracted by Rome's giant piles of gold. Wait, the last part might not be 100% correct. There's probably a citation needed. Throughout the period, generals constantly used their legions to wage civil wars on Rome itself, having their soldiers proclaiming them emperor. From 235 to 284 AD, there were at least 26 people claiming to be a Roman emperor. The legions that had once forged Rome were now its greatest threat, and this constant state of crisis led to an economic depression as short-lived emperors tried to extract as much wealth as possible from the people in order to pay their armies, lest someone else use them to make themselves emperor. Too far from the empire's borders to effectively deal with problems as they arose, Rome had ceased being a useful imperial city, and the empire's focus had been shifting east for a while now. The east is where most of the wealth and urban centres were anyway. This all came to an end in 283 AD, when the Emperor Carus was apparently ... killed after being struck by lightning, and a low-born man from Dalmatia named Diocletian was proclaimed emperor by his troops. He would become the only proclaimed emperor in that century to die a natural death. Diocletian realised that he needed to put an end to people rising to power like he did. Any general could become emperor, then there would never be peace and civil wars would continue to devastate the empire. As whenever an emperor would move to go deal with any problem, say a war in the west, another would-be emperor would just proclaim himself in the east and vice versa. This weakened Rome's ability to deal with any problems. The empire was too big for one man to rule. In the age of horse and foot messengers, there was no way Diocletian could deal with problems arising across the empire fast enough. Diocletian had to do the opposite of what most Roman emperors would have wanted. He had to shrink the Roman Empire. So, Diocletian promoted his buddy Maximian to co-emperor, and both ruled as Augusti, which was the honorific title given to Roman emperors. Diocletian gave himself the far richer east, while Maximian was given the west. The divide was easy because the empire was already split by language. The west spoke Latin while the east spoke Greek. Now, the empire wasn't officially split in any way. It was still a single Roman empire, but both co-emperors had their own respective spheres. No one knew it yet, but what we now call the Byzantine Empire had kind of just begun. Diocletian soon realized that Rome lacked a clear line of succession. Whenever an emperor would die, there was a scramble for power, which just threw the empire into chaos. So, in order to plan for that, Diocletian split the power again. Both Augusti would have Caesars, which was just another honorific title, usually given to the heir apparent of the reigning emperor. These junior emperors would have their own respective spheres of influence and could lead armies and issue laws by themselves, which reduced the workload of senior emperors. So now the empire had a clear ruler in each quarter and could quickly and effectively deal with problems. This rule of four is sometimes known as the Tetrarchy and began when Diocletian and Maximian formally adopted Galerius and Constantius as their sons in 293 AD. So the best thing about this system was that the junior emperors learned how to rule before they became like actual emperors, and this made sure that they had the respect of the subjects already. Diocletian continued to reform many aspects of the empire. He doubled the number of provinces from 50 to almost 100 and grouped all the provinces together into 12 dioceses, each governed by a vicar who reported directly to his emperor. And you can see how the Catholic Church kind of borrowed vocabulary from the empire that surrounded it. Under this system, it became much easier to collect taxes, and so wealth just poured into the empire, meaning that Diocletian could very importantly pay soldiers to guard the frontiers from invaders, and markets once again began to open and roads remained safe. Most importantly, Diocletian changed what the emperor was. For most of Rome's history, they despised kings. So when the Roman Republic ended and the emperors ruled with absolute power, they still pretended that they are one of the people, the first among equals. But Diocletian thought that this led to rebellion, because if the emperor is just a normal man, then anyone can be emperor. So he had to make people think that he was on a much higher level than them. He established impressive courtly rituals that had to be performed before him. He stopped dining with his troops and started wearing some pretty fancy gold robes. He became the representative of Jupiter himself on Earth. So now a rebellion or an assassination would be sacrilegious. Who would dare undermine the will of the gods? Unknowingly, Diocletian had just established how the monarchs of the Byzantine Empire would rule for the next 1,000 years. To fully cement this position though, he had to stamp out those cultists that believed in only one god, those bizarre Christians that have been growing more and more popular lately, which makes a lot of sense really. When you're a peasant that's been repeatedly pillaged by Germanic tribesmen and then taxed into oblivion, the mean gods of the Roman pantheon and their dark afterlife no longer seem appealing, compared to a religion with one god that promises a really fun afterlife with lots of rewards. But the idea of a single god above everything else kind of undermines the concept of a god emperor. So Diocletian issued an edict that persecuted the Christians. Churches were burned and property and wealth were confiscated, and this didn't make Diocletian very popular with later Christians. Finally, after Diocletian had stabilized the empire, increased wealth and prosperity, and firmly placed all the barbarians behind the gates, and set up a succession that wouldn't throw the empire into chaos, he did something unprecedented in the empire's history. He and his co-emperor Maximian stepped down and allowed their Caesars to take over their roles as Augusti. Diocletian retired to become a cabbage farmer, and the modern-day city of Split in Croatia grew out of his palace. He retired after his long 20-year reign, after dedicating his entire youth to stabilizing the empire, knowing that it was now secure in its position and could grow under the leadership of men he trusted. Stay tuned for the next episode to see how it all falls apart, leading to the founding of Constantinople and those pesky Christians taking over the empire. I can't claim that this video series will be an exhaustive or definitive history of the Byzantine Empire. Trying to tell a story of an empire that lasted 11 centuries will unfortunately require leaving things out and glossing over others. My goal here is to give you an overview of the Byzantine Empire, a base from which you can go forth and explore on your own. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you stick around for the rest of the series as things begin to heat up. Please subscribe so that you're notified when new episodes are released, and let me know your opinions in the comments below. I pay close attention to them and I really appreciate the feedback.
Hi, Knowing Better here again. Much like Cogito, over on my channel I discuss a wide range of social studies topics, including history, government, and psychology. We discuss why things are the way they are, how they work, and dispel several myths and misconceptions along the way. My goal is to give you a better understanding of people and the world, so in the future, hopefully, you'll know better.